Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over to Latvia once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a couple of times before. The last two beers that I've had from this brewery have been very impressive, and the one that we're going to have a look at today is the Big Brother style of those two. So I have to say I'm curious to see how this one turns out. So hopefully it's another good beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to a little town called Jelgava to the southwest of Riga, the capital city, and we're having a look at my third beer from Hopalaa Brewery. So this particular beer is called the Hyperjump. It comes in at 10.5% ABV, and this one is a New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, triple IPA. So yeah, this one should be a little bit of a monster. The last two beers that we reviewed from this brewery were the Abstract, which was a single IPA, and then we had the Nebula, which was a double IPA. Both of those were very, very nice, so it just seemed that the next logical step was to try the triple IPA. And if this one carries on in the same vein as the other two, I think we are in for a little bit of a treat for this one. So hopefully you guys enjoy my take on this one. I'm certainly very, very curious about it. So yeah, a big thank you to Remants from the brewery. He very kindly sent me a big box of different beers from Hopalaa. There was a few doubles and things in there, but I think we ended up with about 14 or 15 different unique beers. So you will see a few more beers from this brewery appearing on the channel over the next little while. Quite a few different styles in there, but generally speaking, it is nice to get a few more Latvian beers to review on the channel. It's only really Arpus and Odu that I'd encountered before, so to get another brewery on the channel I think is pretty cool. And if you are watching from Latvia, do let me know some other breweries that I should be checking out from your country. It's cool to see more and more breweries getting into the whole craft beer side of things as well. So long may it continue. But yeah, thank you again to Remats for making this review and the other Hopalaa ones possible. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Hopalaa Brewery before, and you will, as I say, see more added to that list in the near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Latvian beers that I'm reviewing for you, and that will be added to regularly over the next little while. But as I say, let me see about getting some other breweries into that for you. I hope we can get a few more Latvian things on the channel as well. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Hopalaa Brewery once again. So as I've mentioned to you already, Hopalaa Brewery are based in Jelgava, which is in the Zemgale region to the southwest of Riga, the capital city in Latvia, and the brewery is owned by three friends. So this is Rimants Pavziniuks, Kristaps Stankus, and Ainars Rumjansevs. So Ainars is a teacher by trade. Kristaps has a background in finance, while Remants owns its own marketing firm. And this is quite a common thing actually. You do often get people with quite diverse backgrounds grouping together to form a brewery. But these guys apparently discovered craft beer after hearing that a neighbour was brewing something called an IPA, and they'd never heard of this before, so they were very curious about what it was. So after trying one of these IPAs, they then started homebrewing together in around 2013 under the name Kaliu Alus, and this translates into English as blacksmith brewery. But they gradually scaled up their home brewing over time. They brewed in the countryside at first, then they brewed in one of their kitchens, and then they brewed in a garage, and then eventually, having had some really positive feedback on their beers, they decided that they were going to turn professional and start their own brewery. But over the next few years, they released a good number of different beers under the Kaliu Alus name before things changed a little bit. So in 2019, they officially registered the name Fermentum, and this name acts as a kind of parent company, if you will, and the beer is released under the brand name Hopalaa. The idea behind this was that Hopalaa is a name that is quite easy to remember for speakers of other languages. As I've said in the other videos, Latvian is a very, very complex language. It's only really related to Lithuanian, in the context of European languages, and you know, unless you grow up with that language, I think it's a very, very difficult one to learn. So Hopalaa is a kind of nice universal name, I guess, that they can use across the world. But yeah, it seems to be going quite well for them. But it's Einars that is the head brewer, while Kristaps takes care of the finance side of things, and he looks after the yeast and fixes various technical problems around the brewery, while Remants is the marketing and salesperson for the brewery. So yeah, it's, as I say, it seems to be working out quite well for them. But the brewery itself is equipped with a 1,000 litre brew kit, and they've been progressively expanding the fermentation capacity of the brewery. They want to experiment with many different styles of beer, and they're collaborating a lot with other local businesses as well to get different adjuncts for the stouts and sours and stuff like this. You'll see a few of the adjunct sours and stouts coming up in a few videos time. But a number of gypsy breweries also brew their beers at the Hopalaa Brewery as well. So yeah, you'll be seeing some very interesting things coming out of this place over the next little while. I do need to go over to Latvia and take a look at it actually. I've been to Estonia quite a few times because I've got very good friends in Estonia, so I do need to go down and explore Latvia and Lithuania at some stage as well. They seem to have a quite thriving beer scene in Latvia these days. But as of April 2021, when I'm filming this particular review for you, these guys have produced around 60 different kinds of beer, and that seems to be increasing quite dramatically actually. As I say, they've sent me like 14 different beers to review for you here on the channel, so certainly looking forward to trying some of those. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Hopalaa Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on and have a look at this beer then. So just to let you have a little look at the artwork on this one, as you can see, it is quite similar to what we had with the Nebula before, and it seems to be that a lot of their artwork is a little bit kind of space or science fiction-y themed, so that works out quite nicely. This H that they have here, this is the symbol of Hopalaa Brewery. But yeah, Hyperjump, a double dry hopped triple IPA. But the thing you always get with these beers as well is that they've got an ingredients list on the side, so that's one of the really cool things. But there you can see the bigger symbol for Hopalaa Brewery, of course. But yeah, the malt base in this one is Pilsner malt, Golden Promise, flaked wheat and flaked oats. The hops are Mosaic and Victoria's Secret. So Mosaic, an American hop, around 13-14% alpha acid, big juicy tangerine notes. Victoria's Secret comes from Australia. That's got a nice kind of tropically and sort of pineapple-y note to it. A lot of mango, a bit of passion fruit, a bit of pineapple in there as well. And then the yeast in this one is Imperial Juice. So yeah, I think this one should be very, very nice. But yeah, I've no idea what this beer would actually cost in Latvia. Actually, I don't know how much this would cost you to buy. I don't know. Do they use the? I'm trying to remember if Latvia use their own currency still, or whether it's whether they've changed to euros. I know Estonia, of course, uses euros. They used to use the koruna. Before I should have checked that, but I'm not sure how much this beer would actually cost you in Latvia actually. But yeah, lovely 440 milliliter can, this one. So yeah, let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting. The Hyperjump, a double dry hopped triple IPA with Mosaic and Victoria's Secret. If the abstract and the Nebula were anything to go by, this one should be pretty nice actually. So yeah, let's go for it. I was just in the mood today for a triple IPA, so I just kind of thought, you know, bugger it, why not? Let's have a look at this one. But yeah, that's about 3/4 of the beer out of the can. Let me just line it up again so that my OCD is happy. And there we go. So before the head disappears, you can see this one poured with about a 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say cream coloured head. That's going to fade away to just be a kind of nice thin foamy layer quite soon though. There's 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But as you can see, it does look pretty nice. The one thing I'll say about this beer is that for a triple IPA, it's certainly not the soupiest and gloopiest example of this style that I've come across, but when we put the rest of it into the glass, we'll see exactly what it's like. But in terms of colour, this one, it is like a very kind of dark and rich yellow colour, so I would describe this one as being a little bit more akin to like a mixed tropical fruit juice rather than anything else. I always like comparing the New England IPAs to tropical fruit juices because that's really just what their appearance reminds me of. But yeah, remember, when it comes to the colour of your beer, it's dependent on 1, the type of malts that you use, and 2, the length of your wort boil. Adjuncts and barrel aging, of course, can play a role, but those factors are not in play when it comes to this particular beer. The level of haze that you'll get in a New England IPA depends on the wheat and the oak content, of course, as well, and this one has a bit of both. But yeah, that varies from brewery to brewery, so it's not a kind of given that the higher up the alcohol scale you go, the more haze you get in these beers. That will change from brewery to brewery. But remember, the colour, as I say, depends on the malts and the wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar caramelizes, thus you get a darker colour of beer. But it is dependent in the first instance on the exact type of malts that you're using. But when it's Pilsner, Golden Promise, Flaked Wheat and Flaked Oats in this one, yeah, having a fairly bright yellow colour does make sense. And a triple IPA, that's going to undergo a boil of maybe like 90 minutes or so. So yeah, nothing particularly out of the ordinary with this beer in terms of its appearance. It certainly looks the part of a New England triple IPA, but as I say, not the soupiest and gloopiest within this particular sub-style, if you like. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this one. Really curious about this. You can smell the booziness on that right away. But yeah, it does smell quite similar to the other ones that we've had from this brewery before. These beers seem to have, the Hopalaa ones seem to have a nice kind of smoothness to them, if you like. But yeah, you can certainly smell the big boozy character coming out of this one. This is a lovely, lovely smelling beer, I have to say. So yeah, aroma of that is very, very nice actually. So it's got everything you'd want. It's got a big kind of boozy backbone to it. It's got a bit of sweetness and smoothness in there. A triple IPA, I think, has to be a little bit sweet, to be honest with you. You know, the double IPAs, you can get away with them being just sort of straight up and creamy and things, but for me, a triple IPA just has to have a little bit of a kind of brown sugary sweetness to it. But yeah, it's got that big smoothness and sweetness to it. A good little bit of a kind of green component, and then some nice oily, juicy, fruity characters. So yeah, overall, it's got a very, very nice vibe to it, this beer. So let's try and break that down for you a little bit more and explain it kind of more clearly. So yeah, straight away with this beer, at the back of the nose, you're going to get that big wheaty sort of bitey thing out of this one. But a little bit further forward on the nose, you can smell that sort of big, thick, doughy, white bready character coming out of this one. There's a lot of that in there. You can smell the kind of creaminess coming from the oaks, from the oats, not the oaks. But yeah, you definitely get that big, soft, white bready layer coming out of this one. But it comes across as a little bit more kind of thick and doughy in a sense, almost like a bagel. If you think about how a bagel comes across in your mouth, it's just got that big, thick, doughy, white bready sort of thing to it. I love that actually. I keep saying this in reviews recently that a lot of beers remind me of bagels, but I've not had a bagel in such a long time. Need to go and buy some. But yeah, the backbone of this beer, the malty side of things, is really nice. I think a lot of people undervalue the malt base in these IPAs actually these days. They're just focusing on the hops and things, but having a good malt base for me is critical for a beer like this. But yeah, big doughy bready base to this one. You get a nice little bit of a kind of, you do get a bit of a sweet brown sugar to this. You get a bit of that typical kind of butter candy, brown sugary sort of thing, that Werther's Original type vibe to the beer. There's a nice little bit of a kind of sweet concentrated caramel in there, but you get quite a bit of that biscuity and McVitie's digestive sort of thing, which I'm guessing is coming from the Pilsner malt in this one. The Golden Promise, I think, is going to give you the more sort of Werther's Original butter candy type vibe. But yeah, those beers are, those malts are playing a really interesting role in this one. But the big doughy kind of bagely type backbone that you have to this beer is down to the sheer volume of the flaked wheat and the flaked oats that come in this one. This is quite a straight shooting malt base, in fairness. You know, having oats, wheat, a bit of Golden Promise and a bit of Pilsner malt is not going crazy for a New England IPA, I don't think. But yeah, it gives you everything you'd expect, to be honest. There's nothing unusual about this beer, but it just comes across really nicely. So yeah, straight up concentrated caramel, a little bit of a biscuity kind of crispness to this one, McVitie's Digestive Biscuits, wee bit of a kind of Werther's Original quality underneath this one, some oaty creaminess, and then a big sort of bagely doughy bread under this, and a bit of sort of wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose. I think that sums up the malty side of this beer quite well. But on the hoppy side of things, again, it's what you'd expect. You do get a little tiny touch of earthiness out of this one, which comes from the Mosaic, but there's a big spicy floral green component out of this one. There's a lot of kind of just big, bold floral aromaticity out of this. And I mean, Victoria's Secret and Mosaic, Mosaic is like 14% alpha acid. I think Victoria's Secret is about 12 or 13, if I remember rightly. Both of these hops have a big floral component to them. And remember, a New England IPA is reliant mainly on late addition hops. If you add the hops early on during the wort boil, that's when you get most bitterness out of them, and you've got a trade-off over the course of the wort boil, leaving bitterness behind in favour of flavour and aroma. And the New England IPAs tend to be more late hopped, late addition hops, but there's a big green component to this, and it is quite spicy, but at the same time just very bright, but a lovely kind of big grassy zestiness coming out of this one, which I can certainly appreciate. And then the fruity notes on this beer are what you'd expect if you know these two hops. So there's a lovely kind of passion fruity, a bit of a stronger passion fruity note out of this one. There's a few kind of how would we say, there is a little bit of a kind of mango, a little bit of a more oily mango-y note out of this one, and a little bit of a kind of how would we say, you do get a wee bit of a pineapple-y note out of this, and for me that's all the Victoria's Secret. But then you've got this big tangerine note from the Mosaic in this one, and the Mosaic actually comes across as quite oily in this beer, but when you consider it's a triple IPA rather than a double or whatever, that kind of makes sense. So there's a lot of stuff in this beer that's familiar, but again, you've got so many New Englands on the market these days, you can't really ask for much more than that. You just want these kind of beers to be well crafted. But yeah, take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma of this beer. I think it's about time that we got stuck into this one. So yeah, this one is the Hyperjump, a triple New England IPA coming in at 10.5% ABV from Hopalaa Brewery in Jelgava, to the southwest of Riga over in Latvia. Thank you again to Remants for making this review possible. Let's get stuck in. Slanja, skål, prijeka. Yeah, again, that's pretty solid. It really follows on the same vibe that we've had with the other IPAs from these guys. They're just very smooth beers. So yeah, these ones really lean towards you know, being sort of oily and kind of smooth in a sense. As I've told you in previous reviews, I think there's quite a few directions you can take a New England IPA, and they can be a little bit more sort of farmhousey and yeasty, they can be a bit more kind of rye leaning and grainy, they can be barley malt leaning and bready, wheaty and bitey, oaty and creamy, or they can be a little bit more kind of brown sugary leaning and sweet. And this beer and many others, you know, they'll display multiple characteristics. So for me, this is a big, thick, oily and kind of creamy one, and it's got a good wee bit of sweetness to it as well. So this one's giving you quite a few different kind of aspects to the New England IPA style. But this gets a thumbs up from me again. These guys, if they can get their distribution and things right across Europe, I think they'll do pretty well actually. So yeah, more power to them. This is another solid beer. So where to start with this one? Yeah, getting old, hands cracking and stuff. But yeah, so it's kind of what you'd expect. I mean, it is very similar in terms of its malt base to the other ones that we've had before. Straight away with this beer, you can feel that nice, smooth, white bready quality just blanketing the middle of your tongue. It does kind of thicken up the further you go into it, and it becomes a little bit more sort of bagel-like in a sense. And you get one or two little bread crusty elements to it, but then on top of that you can feel a wee bit of the kind of smooth oatiness coming out of the beer. It's very straight shooting in terms of its malt base, it really, really is. But I think that certainly works very, very well for it. Yeah, it is just an awesome it's just an awesome beer, this one, in a lot of ways. Doesn't do, you know, the first impression is that it doesn't do anything unusual with the style. It's just really well crafted, and you cannot really ask for more than that when you consider how many IPAs and things are on the market these days. But yeah, nice smooth white bready backbone, a bit of a kind of doughy bagely sort of thing to it. I really like that. On top of that, you can feel there's a sort of circle, there's a kind of circle of like an oaty creaminess to this one, which I can really appreciate. But yeah, the middle of your palate, the middle third of your palate in this beer is just incredibly smooth. But in the very centre of your palate, you do get a little bit of a kind of concentrated brown sugar, like a sort of sweet caramel there. But as you move further out from that, it does get a little bit sort of Werther's Original, like you get a little bit of that kind of butter candy type thing from that. But then on top of both the concentrated caramel and the kind of Werther's Original sort of thing, as you progressively move out towards the extremities of your palate, you get a little bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing, like a sort of cookie type vibe to this one. I don't know how good a reference Werther's Original and McVitie's digestive biscuits are for Latvians, right enough, but that's what this beer really reminds me of. It's got a lovely thickness to it in the for the backbone there, and that really works for it. So yeah, that's the middle third of your palate actually. I think that covers it very well. As I say, quite straight shooting, but very effective in what it's going for. But yeah, in terms of the rest of the malty side of the beer then, so border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again, you get a nice little bit of a build up in this one. You do get a little bit of that, so you can feel there's a bit of a kind of doughy, yeasty sort of thing there on the border region. Wee touch of a kind of grainy bread crusty element in there, but then as you go on to the back third of the palate, it's distinctly more it's distinctly more kind of wheaty and bitey. So the back third of your palate is all about the wheat rather than anything else. But yeah, sitting on top of that, you have a nice how would we say, you can just get that more airy, yeasty quality out of this one. But the thing is, when you're up in a triple IPA, if you're up at like 10.5% like this one is, the yeasty notes are a bit more kind of thick in a sense. So in some way it does feel airy, but you can just feel that the sort of yeasty quality of this beer is quite, you know, kind of condensed together. So the flavour of the beer on the back third of the palate is distinctly taller, and as you move further forward, it just condenses down gradually. Then as you go into the middle third of your palate, it cuts down quite a bit. Then the middle third of your palate is quite nice and just condensed together in a lot of ways. So yeah, I think that works very, very well in this one. So yeah, absolutely. Straight shooting malt base in this one, but it certainly does the job quite well, so thumbs up to them for that. Let's focus on, pardon me, took a little bit of air down the wrong way there. Let's focus on the hoppy side of this beer. Don't know how I did that to myself there, but yeah, back corners of the palate, then you do get a little touch of earthiness out of this one. As you move further forward from that, the earthiness fades away quite quickly, and then as you move further forward along the sides of the palate, it's distinctly more kind of floral and aromatic in a sense. You get a lovely sort of bright, spicy note out of this one. It gradually builds in spice as you come kind of further forward, and you get a bit of that both from Mosaic and from Victoria's Secret. These are fairly powerful hops, as we said, in terms of alpha acid content, but around the front curve of the palate it's distinctly lighter and grassy, and you do get a wee bit of zestiness out of the grassy quality in this beer. So yeah, it works. It does work very well actually. So yeah, and you know, having a bit of that kind of spicy note to match up with the sort of wheaty bitiness out of this beer, that works. You do want a little bit of bite and a little bit of kind of sweetness out of a triple IPA like this, in my opinion. But remember, beer is subjective. Different people like different things, of course. So let's focus on that front third of your palate then, and the fruity part of the beer. So as I always say, on that front third of your palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. On the border region again, between front third and middle third of your palate, you can feel there is a little bit of a kind of doughy build up in a sense. You get a little touch of a kind of grainy element in there, and then the base of that front third of your palate is more, it is a little bit more sort of kind of bready in a sense. You do have a little bit of that kind of grainy sort of wheaty element coming out of the beer, so you can feel that in this one. It's interesting that it feels a little touch more grainy on the front third of your palate, but sitting on top of that, as I always say, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So at the back of that front third of your palate, you do get quite a kind of concentrated, stronger, pungent, passion fruity note out of it. As you move further forward, it's a little bit more mango-like, and then as you reach the kind of halfway point in that middle third of your palate, you get a little touch of a kind of pineapple-y note to this one. But the front half of that front third of your palate is all about the tangerine note in this beer. To some degree, it's a little bit sort of zesty in a sense, but it's also got a nice kind of oiliness kind of underpinning it as well, which really works. So yeah, in terms of the fruity side of this beer, not too much that's unexpected. It does have a wee bit of that kind of dried, sort of jammy kind of thing coming out of it, so I can certainly appreciate how all of that pieces together. So yeah, it works. It absolutely works in this one. So yeah, big thumbs up to Hopalaa Brewery again for this one. They've pulled off another solid beer with this one. I can feel it going to my head a little bit already at 10.5%, but this will be a nice sipper over the next kind of hour or so to enjoy. So a monster of a triple IPA. It is very, very solid, this one. So, you know, these guys I don't think are going to have much trouble getting out there into Europe and getting their name known a little bit. They're doing some solid stuff. So, you know, if you've tried Arpus and Odu and things like that, their beers are easily on a level with those. And if you've tried Gamma, Dry and Bitter, and you know, some of the Swedish breweries as well, Stigberg, it's OO Brewing and things like that, this beer wouldn't look out of place next to those. So just bear that in mind. But yeah, this is definitely a bit of a monster. As I say, I can feel it going to my head already. But let's round off this review then on the mouthfeel. So overall, this is quite a full-bodied beer. That's not a surprise when it's a triple IPA. It's a big, smooth, yet still quite oily beast of a beer, this one. Overall, the maltiness is quite... The maltiness really helps kind of thicken this beer out a little bit, because that's what's really giving it its oiliness. It's a big, oily, but still relatively kind of slick thing. But in terms of the malty side of the beer, very thick and kind of bagel-like, as I say, but a wee bit of an oily quality in there as well. The malty side of the beer has a good thick breadiness, bagel type quality to it, and then a wee bit of brown sugar sitting on top. In terms of hoppy bitterness, I think this beer is maybe about I think it's maybe about 30-ish IBUs. It doesn't feel overly bitter at all. I would always say that a triple IPA should be about 40 IBUs. It just needs a little bit more bitterness, I think, generally speaking, to a triple IPA. But this one doesn't feel overly bitter. I think about 30 IBUs in this beer, something like that. And then the fruitiness is nice and big and oily. It's got a little bit of a dried fruity kind of quality out of it. You get a little touch of an apricot-y and kind of datey note coming out of this one the further you go into the aftertaste. But yeah, mainly big oily tangerine notes and a few kind of tropical qualities to it as well, like we said earlier. But another lovely beer from Hopalaa, and I think it kind of shows you the quality of stuff that they're doing. So yeah, these guys I don't think are going to have an issue as they kind of spread their name across the continent, if you like. So yeah, I guess we can leave it at that for this one. So this beer was the Hyperjump New England Triple IPA, coming in at 10.5% ABV from Hopalaa in Jelgava to the southwest of Riga over in Latvia. Really interesting beer, this one. Once again, in many ways quite straight shooting, but just really well crafted, and you can't ask for much more than that these days. So yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Hopalaa Brewery as well. We will no doubt return to these guys at some point fairly soon. Let me know some other Latvian beers and breweries that you'd like to see me review on the channel. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Hopalaa's, and I will see you guys very soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and prieka. This one was the Hyperjump Triple IPA, a bit of a monster.